think I have to apologize for the late start of this event. Sometimes these things are beyond our control. Some new programs pop up, and so they affect things that you think you've planned so well, and so we have to always make adjustment. But I think for everyone present here, it's no surprise we are all used to doing adaptive management. Well, on behalf of the NEPAD agency, Dr. Mayaki in particular, my CEO, who couldn't be here, and on behalf of the other organizers of this side event, I want to welcome everyone and just to recognize all the ministers who are here present. You will have to excuse me, I won't be able to read the names because I don't want to cause any diplomatic event, since I know some of the ministers are held in Le Bourget. But please, I want to recognize the ministers here present from African countries and from all our partner countries, all the distinguished ladies and gentlemen and colleagues who have been working on the landscape issues for a very long time. We thank you for being here on a Sunday. It just shows the interest on the subject matter. So as we gather in Paris today, I think it is time, when there is an increased momentum on the challenges facing African countries with regard to natural resource management and the environment in general. These challenges, I think, I don't have to remind those here, but just for the purpose of doing it, I will name a few. Of course, climate change, which is the purpose for which we are all here in Paris, the resulting decline in agricultural productivity, the issues of land degradation, deforestation, and as I said, these are just a few. There are many others, but these few are enough to raise concern and request all of us to take action. So although African economies are growing, food security remains a critical issue and a critical challenge due to, of course, the interplay of these different factors: climate change, high food prices, governance issues. All these are really a concern to the issue of food security. There is added to this is the issue of national security. And therefore, we need to look at how we have been doing business, because I just mentioned, we know these challenges. So the question is, perhaps we should look at how we have been doing business and then consider other ways that we need to work together and do things differently so that we can arrive in different solutions to the ones that we have been having in the last several years. The previous declarations on issues on forest, agriculture, pastoralism, all seem to be insulated within and across countries. And I think it is important that we regroup our efforts, even though we have different mandates and depending on the institutions we work in. It's important that we come together and build synergies and coordinate our efforts. We pull together the different actors at all levels so that our actions can be cumulative. So we don't have, little spots of things happening, but have added value from the activities and actions that we all take at different levels. So we believe from NEPAD's point of view that when we talk about a landscape approach, we really need to look at the issues of multi-sector or multi-level governance, because then we build on and add value in the activities that we all are contributing to. From the African side, I think there is high-level political commitment on what we are all here gathered today. We know that the African Union, through the specialized technical committee dealing with agriculture, rural development, water and environment, to which AMCEN is part of, have already endorsed the initiatives that we are going to be talking and launching today. So the African Resilient Landscape Initiative, that calls on technical and financial partners to support African countries to implement the IARL. Sorry, this acronym is horrible. I'm looking at, I know our American friends have a really nice way of getting acronyms, so we might want to ask them to think again about this. Through investment in integrated landscape management and land restoration. The African Forest Landscape Restoration Initiative has also been endorsed by AMCEN, and of course the focus here is to support country-led forest and landscape restoration effort to bring 100 million hectares of deforested land and degraded land in the continent under restoration by 2030. And there is a direct linkage between these two initiatives, because the delivery of the target of the landscape initiative will obviously contribute to the implementation of the framework of African resilient landscape. So we don't want to see this as two different things, but we want to see the linkages and how one contributes to the other for the interest of our member states, but for the interest of all of us as well. So we have, we're not seen to be doing too many different things and too many initiatives, which the African heads of states have said to us they are tired of initiatives. They really want to see action, and so any new initiative must be adding to concrete efforts on the ground to support member states. So the challenges and opportunities of managing the land and water resources of Africa are intrinsically linked to the development objectives of the continent, and therefore achieving this objective requires sound management of our natural resources as promoted by these two initiatives. In this context, the African Union and the NEPAD agency is endeavoring to create a broad-based alliance for resilient landscape for the continent, in collaboration with the member states of the African Union, the World Bank, the World Resource Institute, the Third Africa Partnership, which I'm pleased to say we are celebrating 10 years of. It has shown its resilience, and therefore we hope to continue to build on that platform to coordinate these new efforts. And of course, with a partnership with the government of Germany, BMZ, and all the other partners who we are very hopeful will be joining to support this very important initiative. Therefore, I would like to invite African countries to join forces, as they have been doing through the Third Africa program, build on what they have achieved so far through the development of their country investment frameworks, to continue to ensure that we have, we integrate resilient landscape approach into natural resource management policies and practices in our countries. From NEPAD's side, as the Secretariat of Third Africa, and as a key partner in this new initiative we are launching today, we commit ourselves to working with our member states and with all of you to be able to drive this very important agenda. In my view, we cannot, to understand climate change and bring it into reality, we really need to look at it from the effect and impact it has within our landscapes. And I think this message resonates quite well with our countries and our civil society and the African population, which we shouldn't forget. All of this is about them. It's about building their resilience to climate change through actions that strengthen their capacity to respond, and as well as their capacity to continue to undertake activities in the economic sectors that drives their livelihood. So whether it's agriculture, forestry, or tourism, we need to see all of this, therefore, within this landscape concept that we are talking about. And lastly, I shouldn't say it, but I think it's important to also make the linkages between the landscape approach and responding to some of these new challenges that we are facing, such as immigration. I don't think I have to preach on the effects of land degradation and what it means in terms of agricultural productivity and therefore job creation, and the reason why some of our youths are leaving the countries hoping that they can find better life somewhere else. So these intricacies are really important, and these connections are so critical that we shouldn't forget about them. This is not just about environmental management and food security, but I think it should be seen in the broader scope of the national security of our countries and of the receiving countries of those who are leaving the continent. So we are very pleased to have all of you here. We are very hopeful that through this initiative, we will be able to make an impact on the ground. I would like to thank you all again, and at this point to invite Mr. Marcus Rupune to come up and also to make some statement. Thank you.
Wow, what a privilege, what an honor to be here with you today. My name is Marcus Repnik. I'm the UNCCD Managing Director of the Global Mechanism, the operational outfit of the convention. So excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, it's really a privilege to be here with you at this moment. A moment that is exciting, a moment that is important, and a moment that is encouraging. A moment that is exciting because we are launching today 2 initiatives. A moment that is important because these 2 initiatives will make a substantial contributions that African countries can achieve land degradation neutrality by 2030. And finally, it's of course a very encouraging moment to see this commitment. But we all know making commitments is important. The guiding question is then how to translate these commitments into country actions. I want to be very brief. I want to share with you 2 critical elements that we believe are important to translate commitments into actions that we from the UNCCD Global Mechanism are currently working with some partners. So what do we need in order to implement these commitments? We need money and we need projects. Money, if we look at the global challenge in terms of 12 million hectares of land degraded every year and the financial resources needed to this, we all know that public resources are important, but they are not sufficient. So the challenge is how to crowd in private sector resources from those who want to do good, impact investors, and from institutional investors that are starting to withdraw from financing fossil fuels. In this context, we are spearheading the initiative, a launch of the LDN Land Degradation Neutrality Fund, a public-private investment vehicle with a very bold ambition to mobilize up to $2 billion a year to finance activities related to land degradation neutrality, financing sustainable land management, sustainable agriculture, and financing rehabilitation and restoration. Where do we stand? I'm very proud that we actually have secured an anchor investor. We have secured support from the European Investment Bank. We have secured support from the World Bank Group's MIGA. And we have secured support from an investment firm specialized on sustainable financing. Our game plan in a year's time to launch this fund at the next COP in Morocco. So one aspect is financing, and the big challenge is, in light of the Addis Declaration, how to crowd in private sector finance to mobilize the resources needed to achieve an implementation of these commitments. The second one is projects. I'm new in my job. And it can tell it's fascinating to see so many people, so many people and knowledge. But I start to perceive that we are working in, we have knowledge in segregated areas. We have people who know everything about restoration and rehabilitation. We have people who know everything about the financial world. We have people who know everything about valuation, economic valuation. And then we have people who own everything what it takes to get money from the Green Climate Fund or from the GLF or from the World Bank. But I have not met too many people from developing and transition countries who actually bring this knowledge together. So what we are currently doing with support of one bilateral partners, and we're looking for others, is to develop a crash training course. Idea, training 600 people, 600 leaders from developing and transition countries a year, a 1 month crash course. What does it take to design and implement transformative LDN, land degradation neutrality projects? So again, these are two activities of the UNCCD global mechanism. We are doing this in partnership. And this brings me to the last point. Everything is about leverage. I think we all are sick and tired of small-scale pilot projects. The question is, how can we come to scale? How can we come to scale to make land degradation neutrality a reality? How to make land degradation neutrality an African reality? And the two initiatives launched today are going to play a crucially important role. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Now the moment you've all been waiting for. Thank you also for being here so early on a Sunday morning. My name is Wanjira Mathai. I am the Director for the Partnerships for Women Entrepreneurs in Renewable Energy, the Chair of the Greenbelt Movement, and proudly a co-chair of the Global Restoration Council. We continue to read today of the devastating impacts of the floods in Chennai, India. I think they mentioned 300 people dead. This is a stark reminder to all of us why the African Resilient Landscape Initiative and the Africa Forest Landscape Partnership Platform are critical and important. I'm so excited, mainly because I don't think there has been, and we've been celebrating the Latin America 20 by 20, but it's time for Africa. 10 countries, 31 million hectares. And we'll hear later about the financial and technical partnership. But this session is really about the political impetus, the political momentum that is building around the Africa 100 and the early initiatives. I want to recognize the countries who have made this day possible: the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Ethiopia, Kenya, Liberia, Madagascar, Malawi, Niger, Rwanda, Togo, and Uganda, leading the way in showing us the promise of landscape restoration and building resilient landscapes. Restoring the integrity of forest landscapes and building community resilience, ladies and gentlemen, is probably it is a matter of life and death, as we have seen, and for all life forms, I want to add. And that's why I'm honored to moderate this panel this morning that will spotlight the promise that Africa is showing both for forest restoration and building resilient landscapes. I want to, indeed, as Estherine said, it's about action, and that's what this panel will spotlight. So allow me to invite 5 panelists this morning, and I know they know themselves, so they can come forward as I introduce them. From Kenya, we have Alfred Gichu. He's the coordinator of RED Plus at the Ministry of Environment, Natural Resources, and Regional Development. Alfred, I know I saw you. There you are. We also have the Honorable Minister, Kare Kawicha Debesa from the State Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, Ethiopia. Yeah, you can just sit anywhere, Alfred. There are stairs up there if you want, on that side. We also have from Liberia, Harrison Kariwe, Kariwe, the Managing Director of the Forest Development Authority. Thank you. We have Isaac Akwa, the Chief Program Officer, EPA Ghana. Please come up. And we have from Burundi, Antoinette Makumi, the advisor from the Ministry of Environment of Burundi. Thank you all so very much for being here and for offering your expertise and spotlighting the great success stories that we're seeing in your countries. And as the panelists settle down, I'll mention that this will be about a 40-minute panel. And unfortunately, I'm told, and I'm looking at my friends, we will not have an opportunity for Q&A, but I can assure you this panel will more than answer all your questions. And of course, they'll be available for discussion after the session. It really is a tight schedule, so we'll try and keep it. But I want to start this panel off by addressing a question to the Honorable Minister Debesa from Ethiopia. Ethiopia is home of one of the largest success stories in restoration. I had the distinct privilege of visiting Tigray and seeing what communities, universities, the government, development agencies are doing there and have restored over the last 30 years 1 million hectares of land to productivity. Can you share with us some of the success or the key success factors for this and what it has meant for resilience for the rural communities in Tigray?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Wandira, for giving me a chance to speak at this moment. As you know, Ethiopia is an agrarian society and is among one of the countries which is badly hit by the effects and the consequence of climate change. And it has been, suffering from a recurrent drought, which has been, devastating the livelihood of our society. So, having seen the challenge, there is no possibility to escape the challenge. Confronting is the only option. So, for the same, we do have set a clear strategy, and we have designed a climate resilient green economy strategy where we have set a clear enabling policy environment how to address this challenge. And in fact, the center is people for its own as well as for the response part as a resource. And we do have a partnership modality with multi-stakeholders from bilateral, multilaterals, and anyone else who can contribute to realize this achievement. So we have, as has been said, close to more than 20 years history of experience addressing the issue of entirely degraded land. As you know, the Ethiopia land is basically mountainous and highland, which is vulnerable to degradation, which is a critical problem in our case. So the restoration has been started, and it was piloted at initial, which was at northern part of the country, but later on it extends to the central, west, and the south part of the country. So people came together to confront the challenge, voluntarily contributing their labor. Per annum, close to 26 million population, on average for 30 days. And this has enabled, for one thing, addressing the environment degradation issue, restoring the ecological value of the degraded site, and as the end, benefiting the community through as a job opportunity for women, youth, and so imagine we have faced during this year in 2 subsequent seasons of rains, of rain loss, but despite the fact we have been still, coping up with the challenge that we have faced, with the resilience that we have built, and addressing through various integrated agriculture activities like irrigation, because of the restored land. The dried land now start to generate at lower landscape catchment area for irrigation activities, and because of these opportunities we have been coping up. So I believe we have moved some step ahead, ensuring food security, regaining the ecological ecosystem of the country, and at the same time addressing the social value of the community. But the challenge is still ahead. What it needs next? More collaboration, more commitment, more engagement, and we can realize our vision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Yes, please. Alfred, I want to turn to you and the situation in Kenya. I am proud to be a citizen of that beautiful country, and I know that it's a rare gift for many countries to have coded in the constitution a restoration target. Kenya has in its constitution a 10% restoration target. Could you share with us what the most important steps are for Kenya in moving this 10% restoration target forward?
Thank you, Wajira, and good morning, everybody. Kenyans in 2010 gave themselves a very ambitious aspiration to achieve a minimum 10% forest cover. Our current cover is somewhere around 6.9 to 7%, which then means that we must identify opportunities within the country to achieve that constitutional obligation. What then that means is that we need to look for other sectors to give us space. The forest sector, much as we would like to work within it, will not help us much. And for us to get there, it took us some time because when we were given the 10% target, the first thing that happened, and I think it would happen within other countries, that we brought the foresters together, started brainstorming on what we needed to do. But they started talking about rehabilitation of degraded sites. They started talking about enrichment plantings. But then somebody within the room told us that much as you put all your efforts in those activities, you are not going to raise your cover by 1% or even 0.1, because that area is already captured within the area that you've been reporting traditionally. So we needed to talk to agriculture. We needed to talk to grasslands, people who operate in the regions. We needed to talk to other stakeholders to give us space for forestry to expand to what the Constitution tells us. So the best way that we thought of organizing ourselves within the country is to bring all relevant stakeholders together for a brainstorming on how these other sectors and forestry could work together to achieve what we are interested in. Then the next step then was to again go into some further discussion on where opportunities for increased forest cover are obtained within the country. Of course, the opportunities that present in the agricultural landscape for increasing the forestry component of that landscape. The opportunities outside, within the grasslands. So the next step that we did was then to do a lot of identification and mapping work to come up to identify all the opportunities that are presented. And this is work that we have tried to do over the last 1 year, where as we sit here, we've been able to identify all opportunities within the country that could, for example, map all areas that can support afforestation and reforestation activities for natural forests. We have similarly been able to identify any forested landscape in the country that can support increased forest cover through rehabilitation, what we normally call enrichment plantings. We have gone into agriculture, land use, and identified opportunities within there that can support an increased tree and forestry component. It's the same case that we have done with the grassland landscape. So that ultimately we are able as a country to talk about a number that can support a national radiscape restoration approach. And then that is a number that as a country will invest in to support achievement of our constitutional obligation. The 10% is just a minimum. So we have been able to even build some scenarios that, for example, say if you give us this amount of money, then we'll be able to raise our cover to a certain percent. So that is how we are approaching it. In Kenya, it's multi-stakeholder driven, but we have also received a lot of technical support from key agencies within and outside with the requisite capacities to support us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred, very much. Thank you, Alfred. Clearly, multi-stakeholder, lots of planning. It doesn't just happen, and that's what's ahead of us. I want to turn to Liberia and ask Harrison. Liberia, proudly for most of us as Africans, elected the first African woman president, and of course, with 46% forest cover, we are proud to say that our hopes are that this will only go up. Is restoration an important priority? That seems like a high target. And if so, what are some of the dynamics currently, if any, because of a woman president that you're experiencing in Liberia?
Thank you, Wanjira, and good morning, everybody. Liberia, just as you say, is one of the greenest spots on planet Earth, but most especially in the West African sub-region. And our government, as part of the requirement for UN to lift the sanction placed on it for using forestry revenue to fuel our war, was a very rigorous reform processes, which included a legislation in 2006 mandating us as the management of the Forestry Development Authority to set aside 30% of our remaining forest cover as protected area and parks. In addition thereto, we are working along with neighboring countries such as Sierra Leone on the Greater Gola Park. We're working with Cote d'Ivoire between the Tai and the Sapo corridor. We are also committing ourselves to restoring at least 1 million hectares of degraded land. Liberia is working with the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility on the RED project and with the Norwegian government to build capacities and compensate communities for conserving their land. Our country is in the process of passing a law that turns the country, the land, over to the communities. And in such case, we are caught between the rock and the hard place because business as usual interest is knocking on the door every day. Logging companies are knocking the doors. How do you get the communities to continue to conserve their land? In this case, compensation becomes paramount. Otherwise, the people will go certainly for logging companies to cut down their trees, pay them land rental and royalties on cubic meter extracted from their land. So Liberia has the political willingness, supported by the president, to conserve the forest and to ensure that we feed ourselves from the degraded land instead of cutting down new forests. With this in mind, we are working with RDH Sustainable Trade, recommended by the Norwegian government, to start outgrower plantations around large plantations in the country, working with logging, working with private sector partners in the agriculture and mining sectors to ensure that we also establish a conservation fund for Liberia. We are looking for partners among all of you sitting here to support that conservation fund to ensure that Liberia's conservation targets are achieved, because we are a small country coming from several years of trouble hit by the recent Ebola crisis with competing priorities, very youthful population that needs employment. And the people traditionally look towards the forest as one of the sources of employment, and only commercial forestry. Today, we want to divert from that, keep the forest standing because it pays more money standing, but our people have a common saying in our country, a dried goat meat is sweet, but what do we eat until the goat gets dried? So between now and 2020, when it is hoped that a genuine, sustainable, predictable source of funding will be available from this COP21, what do we do? The challenge is to us and the initiative that we launched today to support forest countries like Liberia to conserve the original forests in Africa than just depending on restoration. Liberia is ready and moving ahead, taking the leadership because our president is part of the people that decided the SDG. So we can do nothing less. All we need is the support of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. We are grateful for the great work going on in Liberia, indeed. I want to turn over to Ghana and Mr. Akwa, the Chief Program Officer in EPA. I know that Ghana put a specific target in your INDC, which is very exciting and, of course, demonstrates a strong commitment, the national commitment. And how is this commitment going to build resilience for the communities and for Ghanaians in general?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good morning. Yeah, in Ghana, land resources are critical for our economic growth, environmental services, and biodiversity values. And Ghana has 6 ecological zones. We have the forests, the savanna, and the coastal areas. And within the savanna areas, the savanna ecological system, where we have a lot of flora biodiversity migrating from Burkina to the Mole Park annually. So there is a need for us to protect, especially that corridor between Nasinga and Mole Game Reserve. But we have a high rate of degradation because the land resources is what creates a lot of employment and then economic growth, and then our youth depend on it for agriculture and our food security. And we have a high rate of deforestation due to logging, as my colleague mentioned, mining, agricultural activities. And the rate of deforestation is about 2.1% per annum, which is about 315 hectares. So we've initiated, the Ministry of Environment has initiated planting 30 million seedlings per annum within the country. And through Terra Africa, we've also developed what we call the Ghana Strategic Investment Framework. And we are using the watershed approach through landscape. And currently, we are working within the 3 northern regions, and it's multi-sectorial. We have 5 sectors: forestry, wildlife, environment, agric. All these sectors are working together to ensure that we restore the degraded lands. And in the 3 northern regions, between Nasinga and Mole, we've been able to implement sustainable land management practices through the landscape approach, and then managing the corridor so that the migratory flora from Nasinga to Mole will not be hindered. And what we are trying to put in place under the sustainable land management is to put payment for environmental services so that those who provide those ecological services will be incentivized for them to sustain those activities. And that's what we are currently doing, and we need support from those experts who understand the PES, payment for environmental services, because it's quite critical for us. It's the first time we are trying to introduce, and it's been critical. If you are able to put that incentive systems in place, we hope we will be able to encourage more people to restore the degraded lands within our areas, and also stop the migration from the northern part to the southern part, where our youth come to the south and be doing menial jobs, and we call them KIU and those things. So we need the assistance of all communities to assist us, especially to put the PES system in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akwa. Madam Makumi, Burundi is a small country and quite densely populated, and I know that you're working very hard on both resilience and restoration. But can you share with us some of the priorities for resilience in Burundi at the moment?
Merci, Madame la modératrice. Je veux m'exprimer en français. Je ne sais pas s'il y a la translation.
Yeah, I think everybody has interpretation. Are they outside? But everybody actually looks like they understand French too. So Madame can continue. If you need it, please, they're out through the back door.
Merci, bonjour Auguste Assemblée. Je suis ici pour déclarer haut et fort que le Burundi est déjà engagé et déterminé à l'utilisation de l'approche paysage résilient pour améliorer la productivité agricole et lutter contre l'insécurité alimentaire qui menace les populations, et tout en précisant que la population dépend de l'agriculture à plus de 90%. Donc c'est une approche qui sous-tend le développement durable, l'utilisation donc des ressources naturelles et qu'on devra concilier avec la gestion de l'environnement. Et je dois aussi préciser qu'il y a des opportunités par rapport à notre pays. Et le cas précis de la région du nord du Burundi, dite la région de Bugesera, c'est une région qui est menacée par des sécheresses répétitives, mais c'est une région avec des lacs et des marais et qui constituent les milieux aquatiques importants convertis en système d'air protégé. Alors, bien que c'est insuffisamment valorisé, ces marais et ces lacs du Nord, ils constituent une ressource importante pour des programmes d'irrigation et pour le tourisme dans une région très pauvre et affectée par des famines répétitives dues à la sécheresse prolongée, comme je l'avais déjà précisé. Donc l'approche paysage viendrait donc soutenir les initiatives du pays pour mettre en place un cadre stratégique d'investissement dans le cadre de la gestion durable des terres et de l'eau. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Makumi. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for our second round of questions, but I think everybody will agree that we are more engaged and more inspired by what is going on in these 5 countries. And again, these are just a few of the countries that have already made significant commitments and are taking great actions. It is a privilege for me, before we close, to recognize the presence here of the Honorable Minister of Environment from the Republic of Congo, Minister Henri Jombo, a good friend of the Greenbelt movement. I want to invite you to say a few words. Je vous passe la parole if you would like to say a few words. He too will speak in French, so if you need to get your headsets ready.
Bonjour. Je m'excuse d'arriver en retard. Je suis à la fois heureux de découvrir les visages de tous les amis ici présents, ceux qui œuvrent pour la conservation pour la protection de la nature, de la biodiversité en général. Aucune question ne m'est posée, mais je suppose qu'on voudrait que je parle de notre expérience. Je ne parlerai pas que l'expérience du Congo, mais du bassin du Congo, qui est un projet mondial. Vous savez que en 2002, au sommet mondial de développement durable à Johannesburg, on avait lancé l'initiative sur le partenariat sur les forêts du bassin du Congo, qui comprend aujourd'hui près de 60 partenaires, dont les plus grandes organisations, les plus grandes ONG internationales, les gouvernements les plus puissants du monde et enfin toute l'Afrique centrale, pour gérer durablement les écosystèmes forestiers d'Afrique centrale. Voyez-vous, l'Afrique centrale est encore cette tache verte au milieu de la planète, plutôt au milieu du continent, qui regorge donc de ressources forestières importantes, mais qui, au nord, est menacée par le Sahara, au sud par le Kalahari. Si ce massif forestier n'est pas bien géré, il va se dégrader, il va se savaniser, la sécheresse va pénétrer dans cette partie, puis le désert va gagner l'ensemble du continent africain. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes en train de promouvoir la grande muraille verte qui doit relier Dakar à Djibouti, qui exige donc un effort considérable d'investissement. Mais c'est parce que nous voulons réparer les dégâts causés sur la nature. Et nous allons payer très cher. Alors, il vaut mieux prévenir que guérir, tout en associant la réparation avec la prévention. Dans le bassin du Congo, les pays se sont engagés ensemble à gérer de manière concertée les écosystèmes forestiers au service du développement économique des pays respectifs, tout en respectant, bien sûr, les normes environnementales afin que la forêt puisse se régénérer naturellement. Et la forêt se régénère grâce à l'aménagement forestier qui voudrait que chaque concession forestière qui est attribuée puisse disposer d'un plan d'aménagement qui garantit les espaces respectifs d'exploitation forestière, d'éco-développement pour les populations, des zones écologiques de conservation ou de protection, et ainsi de suite, qui sont respectés dans le plan d'aménagement. On veille à ce que les parties réservées à l'éco-développement, donc aux populations, puissent aussi être gérées durablement. Sinon, on va entamer les autres espaces. Voilà, ce programme a conduit aujourd'hui à la certification forestière dans le bassin du Congo. Beaucoup de pays connaissent, donc ont des concessions certifiées. Le Congo-Brazzaville, à lui seul, a déjà 2,5 millions d'hectares de forêts certifiées au standard le plus rigoureux au monde, le FSC, et représente donc la moitié des forêts certifiées du bassin du Congo, représente 32,5% des forêts certifiées FSC au monde. Je crois que c'est quand même un label, c'est un prix Nobel qu'on peut applaudir. Voilà. Donc, la prévention, par une utilisation responsable de la ressource, nous permet d'économiser les moyens, l'énergie, et ainsi de suite, et de nous garantir un écosystème en renouvellement perpétuel. C'est pour cela que nous avons opté. C'est une expérience réussie. Nous avons aussi le RED+, qui vient s'ajouter et qui va sûrement apporter des ressources pour qu'on lutte contre la pauvreté, pour qu'on puisse préserver les écosystèmes. Mais il faut que ce soit un mécanisme palpable, qu'il produise des résultats concrets, qu'il rassure les parties prenantes, qu'ils puissent aussi donner la preuve qu'ils participent à la lutte contre la pauvreté, que les populations, même les plus éloignées, y compris les autochtones, peuvent être informés des procédures, du concept, des notions, et ainsi de suite. Donc, il y a une simplification nécessaire, aussi bien du point de vue du contexte général que des procédures qui doivent être appliquées dans le cadre de ce processus. Bien, alors nous souhaitons bien sûr que ceux qui gèrent bien leur forêt puissent aussi être récompensés. Malheureusement, on constate qu'on donne la prime aux mauvais élèves et que ceux qui sont bons sont laissés pour compte. Je peux vous dire que le bassin du Congo, du fait de cette manière de gérer, a le taux de déforestation le plus bas de 3 bassins forestiers tropicaux du monde. Le Congo a le taux de déforestation le plus bas de tous les pays. C'est le résultat d'un travail et de la mise en œuvre d'une politique réelle. Mais c'est des expériences réussies qui sont ignorées. Est-ce qu'elles le sont sciemment ou alors inconsciemment? Mais nous souhaitons de plus en plus que ces expériences soient connues et qu'elles puissent servir aussi au reste du monde. Nous avons une certaine ingénierie en matière de gestion durable des forêts qui peut servir aux autres. Enfin, pour terminer, je dirais que dans le cadre de la restauration des paysages, le Congo avait mis au point pour la première fois au monde la technique de clonage de l'eucalyptus et partant d'autres arbres en 1975. Cette technique est aujourd'hui utilisée dans le monde entier et a révolutionné les plantations forestières. Et je crois que la plupart de nos pays l'utilisent sans savoir d'où elle vient. Il y a même un pays qui nous a dit que c'est leur technique. J'ai dit que c'était faux et j'ai apporté la preuve qu'ils nous avaient envoyé en 1978 3 stagiaires dont je connaissais le nom. C'est eux qui ont importé la technique chez eux. Nous n'avons pas demandé pour cela, bien sûr, des droits d'auteur, des paiements quelconques, mais au moins qu'ils soient heureux de disposer de cette technique, d'en profiter, sans vouloir nous arracher les droits d'auteur. Bien, donc l'Afrique doit savoir que le Congo est disposé à apporter son expertise dans la préparation des arbres, la production des pépinières, l'encadrement des populations villageoises, et ainsi de suite, parce que aussi, c'est l'exploitation du bois à énergie qui est source de déboisement accéléré. Il faut donc associer les populations à la culture des arbres pour qu'elles s'approprient leur plantation et les renouvellent, parce qu'ils auront toujours du bois. Et au lieu d'assister à l'avancée du désert, nous allons plutôt assister à la conquête du désert. Voilà, Angela, merci de m'avoir donné la parole. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Jumbo, for sharing that. I think it's hard to imagine with these examples. The evidence is clear. For us, the opportunities for scale-up through the Africa Resilience Landscape and Ali is absolutely opportune, and I think the movement is definitely poised to take off. I think the benefits that were highlighted today, building resilience for communities, agricultural productivity, food security, water security, and the need as well to have an increased commitment, community engagement, genuine community engagement, incentive systems, financing, all bring this together. Please join me in thanking this incredible panel. The round of applause for their excellent work. And I will ask, as we move into the next session, that the panel remain where you are. You look so good. We don't want you to move. And as I invite onto the stage our next speaker, I want to invite Madame Magda Lovey from the World Bank Group to speak a little bit about the way Ali and Africa 100 are working together. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Wanjira. Wow, what a wonderful opportunity here, and such a great inspiration from countries in Africa, showing their commitment, showing their interest, and the tremendous complexity of the agenda that we are talking about. Excellencies, development partners, participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor and a great pleasure to be here. I think this panel discussion has been a wonderful demonstration of the interest in the agenda and the commitment. I would like to congratulate all the countries, many who are not here today, but equally supportive of this agenda. I would like to also congratulate to NEPAD and the African Union for the leadership as it took to endorse these initiatives, which are going to change the landscapes in Africa and people's lives. I think these initiatives are also building on a tremendous hard work and a lot of experience that is on the ground already. Some of that experience is linked with the Terra-Africa partnership that Estherine referred to, and the World Bank has been very honored to be part of. This experience and tremendous knowledge that has been created in the past 10 years, as we are celebrating the 10 years anniversary of Terra-Africa, showed a lot of things that are possible, which were not possible before. I think it was demonstrated that it is possible to stop the desert. It is possible to restore degraded lands, and it is also possible to do that at large scale. So that knowledge and that experience is now creating a new momentum, and that momentum is very important at the time when we know climate change is not on our side, and a lot of statements have already been made of how important and how big challenge African countries are still facing in this context. So there is an increasing need to look at issues in an integrated way. And the African Landscape, Resilient Landscape Initiative has been doing that in a very comprehensive manner. It focuses on the need for bringing together the different objectives. Many of them have been mentioned: the land degradation neutrality, climate smart agriculture, biodiversity protection, forest restoration, and the RED agenda. And I think it keeps the importance also of people's lives and socioeconomic development in the focus, because all this is about people and development in Africa. I think the panel discussion very clearly showed the tremendous complexity in which countries are implementing these programs, and the tremendous variety in which they need to face these challenges. So the Africa Resilient Landscape Initiative is a broad program that can be implemented through a variety of projects and programs under it. One of them, the Great Green Wall Initiative, got a lot of attention in the past days at the COP. This initiative has been, a few years ago, looked at as an ambitious vision that might not be possible. I think programs, including the one that the World Bank has been supporting with a $1.1 billion investment, also showed that it is actually a doable reality. The World Bank has supported $4.4 billion through various sectors, which also support the Great Green Wall in a broader sense. And I think this is this broader agenda that the African Landscape Initiative is also bringing together. During the Heads of State meeting the other day, many new promises, new commitments have been made. The World Bank itself has committed about $2 billion new funding for the Great Green Wall Initiative, and together with partners, $4 billion were committed. These are all part of the Africa Climate Resilient Low Carbon Development Business Plan that was launched during the COP that provides a broad framework for development assistance for climate resilient growth in Africa. I think these plans are also very important part of the broad framework in which the climate resilient initiative and the Africa 100 initiative are working together. The World Bank is very happy and very excited to partner with our client countries, as well as World Bank, World Resources Institute, the government of Germany, and many others, to bring together these initiatives and to bring together our financial policy expertise so that these initiatives can indeed turn the landscapes of Africa to green, and also to improve the lives of people on these landscapes, which is at the heart of these initiatives. So I am very excited, humbled, and really very energized by the interest and by the commitment that this launching event is bringing together. And I am very excited to work with many of you and for many of you in the client countries to make these initiatives reality and work for the better future of the Africa region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Magda, and certainly those numbers are the sort of scale we hope we will be announcing here for Africa 100. Thanks for your partnership, for the World Bank's commitment as well. I want to introduce, privileged to introduce Ms. Ingrid Hoven, the Director General of the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development from Germany. Ingrid, please. Needs a photograph, I guess.
Thank you, Banjara, and good morning to all of you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues. Let me first congratulate this wonderful panel for your insights, and especially for actually launching the two initiatives that we are presenting and discussing today. This is a remarkable achievement, a remarkable step, and we feel honored to be invited to partner in this endeavor. And I think this is especially important to underline that after a couple of months of preparation, the ARLI as well as the African Forest Landscape Restoration Initiative, AFR 100, has been endorsed officially by AMSEM, which means it has really a really robust footing within the African development planning and development initiatives. From the very beginning, when this African initiative for forest landscape restoration started to take shape, there was no doubt that the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development was going to give its full support. First, because, I mean, some of the reasons why we were happy to join this movement was that first, forest landscape restoration is a central element of the BMZ's forest strategy. Our overall and overriding goal is to support the implementation of the New York Declaration on Forest, as well as the Bonn Challenge. And every year Germany commits more than 500 million euros in official development assistance for the conservation of forest, the protection of the biodiversity and other ecosystems. And FLR obviously is an integral part of that. And our strategy in the forest sector and the preservation of natural resources are threefold. So first, we want to give it a push really to give more support to developing countries that engage seriously in avoiding deforestation through the REDD+ mechanism. And on Monday morning, we announced here together with our partners from the United Kingdom and Norway that we are going to step up our financial commitment by 2020 to $1 billion per year, really to provide the incentives that are needed to increase to increase implementation in this field of avoided deforestation. But certainly this is not sufficient. At least we need 2 additional pillars, and these are part of our strategy. The second one is on restoration. Landscape restoration, reforestation. We know we need more things. We know we have to protect soil fertility. And unless we give more prominence to those areas, we won't actually achieve the Sustainable Development Goals that we all have agreed upon end of September. And finally, the third pillar of the German forest strategy relies on deforestation-free supply chains. We also have to deal with the drivers of deforestation and make sure not only in developing countries, but also we at home, we have to make sure that we change consumption and production patterns in a way that we not additionally fuel the drivers of deforestation. So this will be one third line of activity that we are going to further pursue and develop, intensify cooperation together with other partners like the Dutch government. FLL is such a beautiful area because, as it has been said previously, it's not mainly about the preservation of natural resources and protecting them, but it's mainly about local development and people. It's a people-centered approach because it deals really with the provision of firewood. It deals with actually preserving the water that is needed for daily consumption. It's about really continues to provide the medicine that is needed at the local level. And it increases agricultural productivity to those families that are most in need and to those women that actually feed their families because they are dealing with agricultural production. Additionally, we all know that our natural habitat and biodiversity is more than simply livelihood environment. It has to do with our culture, with our being and our nationality. I think, and therefore landscape restoration really brings a lot of good to our doing and our development cooperation. Why are we so keen to partner with Africa? From the German perspective, Africa now for many, many years has been the focus area of our bilateral cooperation. More than 50% of our cooperation and financial commitments per year is centered vis-à-vis cooperating with African countries. Our goal is to eradicate poverty. 0 poverty by 2030 is the new goal. We want to build strong institutions, which are needed for FLR, but for many other areas as well. We want to increase productivity, prosperity, economic activity. As has been said by the ministers, Africa is a young continent. We have to create employment opportunity for the youth, and we have to create an environment that actually provides future and perspectives for the young generation. And finally, of course, the protection of natural resources has been from the very, very beginning a cornerstone of our cooperation program. Minister, Democratic Republic of Congo reminded us of this wonderful initiative that was actually started in 2002 at the Rio+10 summit in Johannesburg. And we decided really to provide an additional push to the protection of the Congo Basin. And we are so proud that from the very start we could be a partner in this endeavor. Let me give me one very concrete example what FLR can bring to local communities. We have one very successful example from Madagascar. By empowering the local communities and providing them with clear land use rights, very important issue, 9,000 hectares of degraded lands were restored for fuel wood production. But in consequence and in return of this endeavor, the pressure on natural forests was reduced, and close to 50,000 hectares could be preserved. So FLI brings really a triple win to communities and to our partner countries. It's about a people-centered approach that increases income and the livelihood. It is an approach that actually deals with carbon sequestration. And finally, it is also an approach that makes the whole landscape more robust and more resilient against the adverse impacts of climate change. So, what will be our role in the AFFR 100 initiative? So BMZ itself will provide, of course, expertise. We will use our broad portfolio, for instance, in Africa, on agriculture productivity, landscape restoration. So we already have a huge portfolio of ongoing activities. In financial terms, it's a portfolio of about 700 million euros. We can use this portfolio really to scale up pilots and to scale up activities. We provide support to the NEPAD agency in really to build up a platform that will catalyze this initiative. But I'm really thrilled to see so many African countries to take the lead and to stepping up their ambitious restoration commitments. I think this is actually the key precondition to bring in financial and technical partners and really to pledge additional financial and technical support in favor of this initiative. I think today what we have heard, the commitments already made from the 10 African countries, Majara has named them in the introductory remark, this is really a very promising start. But as Estherine has reminded us in her introductory speech, there have been many initiatives in the past. And what really counts is what is going to happen on the ground in implementation in the forthcoming years. So this time we really want to make a difference by really bringing implementation to the African countries. Commitments have been made under the New York Declaration, under the Bonn Challenge. We have learned about additional, more specific opportunities in many African countries. Now we have to work together. It will not be an easy journey, but you can really rely on Germany. We will be a firm and robust partner at your side to make it happen, to bring the technical support and the financial support that is needed in order to concretize implementation of forest landscape restoration. And I'm really happy that this is just the start. And I'm looking forward to meet again with you, perhaps to deal with very specific steps in specific countries or at the regional level, and then to see the first results of this wonderful initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ingrid, and thank you so much for the leadership of the government of Germany and for the valuable partnership and your commitment certainly to Africa. We are glad that indeed Germany has, way ahead of many, identified building resilience and restoration as part of the zero poverty by 2030. And that example from Madagascar, just love it. Thank you so much. It is a privilege really to introduce Dr. Andrew Steer, no stranger to this audience. He's the president and CEO of the World Resources Institute. And I want to recognize the fact that WRI, BMZ, and NEPAD have really been the architects of Africa 100. So thank you so much, Andrew, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Wanjira. What a delight it is to be here. Thank you, Estherine. Thank you, Ingrid, and especially Your Excellencies. Thank you, ministers and leaders in this wonderful vision. Thank you all for coming. I'm the President and CEO of the World Resources Institute. Our motto is count it, change it, scale it. We're good at the counting, the science. We're pretty good at working with others on the changing. But this is about the scaling. And we are privileged to be part of an amazing vision led by African leaders to restore 100 million hectares in Africa. If African leaders are successful in this, food will become more secure, farmers will become more prosperous, soils will become more resilient, and by the way, carbon, which up there in the sky is killing people, will come down to earth in the form of trees and bushes and crops and soils where it will bring life and prosperity. This is a spectacular vision, and it is a huge privilege for organizations like the World Resources Institute to be a humble part in helping to make it happen. Now, what I want to do now is ask two wonderful people to come to the stage, one after the other, and say just a few words. They are two of the key partners. And after you've spoken, both Mark and Jane, I'd ask that you go along there and stand behind the ministers. And then I'm going to call up about 10 others, not to speak, you'll be glad to hear, but simply to come up and stand there. And that will be the symbolic launch of Africa 100. And then we'll take a picture, and that will be it. And then you can go home and get on with actually delivering this wonderful vision. So first I want to call on Mark Tursek, who is a great friend and leader in this great idea of restoration. He is the president and CEO of the Nature Conservancy, perhaps the largest organization that really seeks to bring capital, both public, private, to conserve nature. But he's also here as a chair of the Nature Vest, which is an impact investor, and he's going to talk about both. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone. Ministers, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a privilege to be here. This is a tremendous initiative. Restoring all of this land, degraded land in Africa, is enormously important for a variety of reasons. First, we're here at COP21. We know restoring ecosystems of all types could, as much as 20–25%, address the climate challenge we face. But likewise, very important for livelihoods, community strength, sustainable economic growth, biodiversity protection. Yes, I work at the Nature Conservancy. We're partners with many of you here, many of you ministers. Nature Vest, Andrew mentioned, is an initiative to source private investor-provided capital to lever up other capital to help us scale and accelerate conservation. So I want to just comment on that because I think it's a note of encouragement. Of course, we'll always need donor capital. We'll always need government grants. We'll need the multilaterals like the World Bank. This is ambitious and complex hard work. But private capital is ready to be mobilized too. Let me note one example. The Northern Rangelands Trust in Kenya. TNC, my organization, we're proud to partner with the NRT and the Lewa Conservancy. And year by year, this program continues to grow. Now some 33 communities, 11 million acres, 500,000 people. And the results are very good. The grasslands are recovering. Sustainable economic growth is underway. The grazing business is better than ever. And private capital has now been provided to help us lever and accelerate further. We now have a livestock-to-market business organized as a business with private capital, a further incentive for the communities to participate, and the outcomes are very encouraging. What's important about this example, I think, are a few things. First, it's all backed by good science. So the conservation interventions really work. If something doesn't work, that's okay. Then we try to learn from that, but we don't hide it. We learn from that so we can be precise. There's good governance and rules. So the communities that join, they have to play by the rules. So everybody's doing the same thing, carefully coordinated by the NRT. And it makes business sense. Very important, because if it makes business sense and it can continue to make business sense, we think we can draw in more capital, grow the Northern Rangelands Trust, and apply this same model elsewhere in Africa and around the world. I'll stop, but there are other such examples. Again, remember, good science, good governance, driven by community engagement, and making business sense so we can attract private capital. Thank you very much. Best wishes to all of the ministers for this important work. We're glad to be proud of it.
Thank you. Yeah, if you go along there, and great. Thank you, Mark. I now want to invite one of the most loved women in the world. Jane Goodall is here. My goodness me. I should say Dame Jane Goodall, who is not only the world's foremost expert on chimpanzees, she has devoted her life to the recognition that both chimpanzees and God's creatures need to work in harmony with nature. And the Jane Goodall Institute is doing amazing work, changing hearts and minds and human behavior, and also restoring corridors and doing really terrific things. When I go home, my 13-year-old and 14-year-old will say, "So who did you meet?" And I could list all the heads of state, but when I say, "Oh, and Jane Goodall," that's what they're wanting to know about. And they once spent 3 hours waiting outside a hotel in Rio, waiting for Jane to arrive from the airport. And they waited and they waited just so they could meet her. And still to this day, in their bedrooms, they have the picture of them and Jane Goodall. So Jane, come and tell us and inspire us, and then go and stand there.
Well, my goodness, after that. Well, I think what I'll do, I sort of came into this whole picture really from a different perspective from many of you here. I came in, as most of you know, because I was studying the chimpanzees. And so don't you think it's time that we brought into this room the voice of some of these other species out there with whom we should be sharing the planet and for whom we hope these initiatives will help? And that is, and I know some of you know that voice. So because time is short, let me be very brief. So why was it that I left the paradise of Gombe National Park in Tanzania and began what I'm doing now, which is traveling 300 days a year around the world, talking about the plight of the forests, the plight really of the environment everywhere, and the plight of the people. And it began when I realized that chimp numbers were dropping and forests were disappearing. And it crystallized when I flew over the tiny Gombe National Park in 1991 and saw what had been a forest belt stretching along the east shore of Lake Tanganyika and curling round through Uganda into the Congo Basin. And I looked down and I saw Gombe National Park as a little island of beautiful forest surrounded by completely bare hills. And that's when it hit me. You know, there were more people living there than the land could support, too poor to buy food from elsewhere, the farmland completely degraded from overuse. And how could we even try to save the chimpanzees and their little forest while people were living in this difficult situation? And so that's what led to our program. We call it Take Care, or Takari. And it began with just 12 villagers. It began by putting together a team of Tanzanians, local Tanzanians, going into the villages and listening to the people what they thought we could do to help. With a tiny grant from the European Union, we were able to start this program with the help of, I think some of you may know, George Strunden, but he was really influential in designing this program. And we started where the people wanted, more food, which meant restoring fertility to the overused land without the use of chemicals, and better education and better health care. So that's where we began. Then we could, as they came to trust us, implement water projects and restoration of the forest on the degraded slopes, and microcredit, because I went to visit the Grameen Bank with Muhammad Yunus, and working with groups of women, choosing their small projects that had to be environmentally sustainable, working to give as many scholarships as we could to girls to keep them in school. And this all began to work. We especially concentrated on women and introduced family planning because all around the world, as women's education has increased, family size has tended to drop. And so, to cut the long story short, we then introduced technology with geospatial mapping, Lillian Pentea, some of you may know. And in this way, we were able to help the villagers make their land use management plans. And they decided that they would set aside land all around Gombe National Park as a buffer zone between the chimpanzees and the people. We were so successful with this program, it's now in 52 villages, and a corridor from the little isolated Gombe National Park is growing down to the south, and it's beginning to work. And perhaps most exciting of all, and we do work with Red Plus through the Norwegian government, but I think most exciting of all is the fact that we introduced village monitors. Google Earth gave us tablets. We did workshops, and each village provides 2 forest monitors. They're volunteers. They use the tablets. Some of them can't read or write, but they're very proud to go into the forest. And of course, with GPS, we know that they have been into the forest. And all of this information is then uploaded, downloaded. I don't know, if you go up to a cloud, you must upload, I suppose. So it goes to Global Forest Watch, so we can actually prove that what we're doing is working. So we're now in 6 African countries, and we are ready to scale up, which is why this is so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jane. That was brilliant. And now the next group is waiting outside for their session. So we're going to go through this quite briefly. I'm just simply going to ask the other partners to come up here, starting with IUCN, represented by Stuart McGuinness, Global Director of Nature-Based Solutions. IUCN will mobilize its African and global members to deliver technical support to carry out restoration activities on the ground, and will also establish 2 FLR hubs in Africa to support the Africa 100 initiative. Second, ECRAF. We'll ask Tony Simmons, the Director General of ECRAF, to come up here if you would. For over 35 years, ECRAF has been documenting the benefits of agroforestry. Agroforestry will contribute 30 to 50% of restoration efforts on the continent. Third, I'd like to ask FAO, represented by Doug Maguire, Manager of the Forest Resource Management Team. FAO will contribute to the Africa 100 through its current work in Africa, supporting 6 countries in the Great Green Wall Initiative, and through the support being provided by FAO's Forest and Landscape Restoration Mechanism. Next, the Clinton Foundation, represented by Jackson Kimani, East Africa Regional Director. Hope you're here, Jackson. The Clinton Climate Initiative works with governments and communities to help them sustainably manage forests and lands. We've already done the next one, which I think is the Nature Conservancy, which protects nature and preserves life. And also the next one, which is the Jane Goodall Institute, which does just quite remarkable things. Next is the Landscape for People, Food and Nature, LPFN, represented by Sarah Scher, who is the chairperson. LPFN is an international partnership that includes more than 70 organizations. Through the African Landscape Action Plan, it will support widespread application of landscape restoration to achieve Africa 100 goals. Next, Kijani, which you'll be glad to hear is not represented today because it's out planting trees. I'm told Kijani rehabilitates indigenous forests by empowering young Kenyans through training in agroforestry and cultivation of non-timber forest products. I'd like to invite, of course, BMZ, Ingrid Hoven, the German Development Agency, which is one of the most remarkable development agencies on Earth deeply committed, as you heard from Ingrid, to this agenda. I'd like to invite the World Bank Group, represented by Magda Levey, the practice manager of the Natural Resources Group, and Paola Agostini, the global lead for resilient landscapes. The World Bank has made a commitment of $1 billion to the Africa 100 project for investment in 14 African countries. Next, Green World Ventures, represented by Mark Barash, the Chief Executive Officer. They have made a commitment already of $65 million by 2020. Green World Ventures envisages a regenerative industry based on large-scale cultivation and processing of moringa trees in Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana. The fast-growing tree is drought-tolerant, grows on degraded land, and has leaves containing 30% high-quality protein. It is a superfood. Next, Planet Bamboo, represented by Camille Rebello, the co-founder. It has committed $175 million by 2020. Planet Bamboo has a dual mission to restore degraded land and the well-being of communities in some of the poorest parts of the planet, whilst providing an alternative fiber for the food and fiber-based products to reduce pressure on the world's remaining natural forests. Next is NatureVest, which we've already had, thanks to Mark. So it's going to play a very major role, isn't it, Mark? Good. Next is the Moringa Partnership, represented by Clement Chenost, the Technical Director. It's made a commitment of $56.5 million in the next decade. Moringa is a pioneer impact fund dedicated to profitable agroforestry projects with high environmental and social impacts in sub-Saharan Africa. Next is Permian Global, well known to us, represented by Ed Rumsey. The principal, Permian Global, is an investment firm dedicated to the protection and recovery of natural forests to mitigate climate change. Next is Terra Global Capital, represented by Leslie Derchinger, the founder and managing director. It's made a commitment of $100 million by 2030. Terra Global seeks to provide technical expertise and investment capital to support the Africa 100 objectives in a collaborative and innovative manner. Next, Sustainable Forest Investments of the Netherlands, represented by Paul Hall here, and it's a great pleasure to have you here. You've made a commitment of $100 million, and you're going to hand that over now? No, you're not. No, it's a book. I prefer the money.
The money is not in the book.
Oh.
But the trees are coming, and thank you for the invitation.
Great. Thanks so much, Paul. That's fantastic. They've committed $150 million. Sustainable forest investments invest in large-scale agro and timber plantations in Africa since 2007. Their plantations are between 10,000 and 20,000 hectares in size. I'd like to invite Braulio Diaz, who has arrived now. Braulio is the Executive Director or Secretary General of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Braulio, you were supposed to be here earlier, and we were looking forward to your keynote speech, but unfortunately we don't have time for it anymore. Braulio is doing an absolutely wonderful job putting biodiversity back on the map in a big way. And of course, I'd like to invite Estherine Fotobong from NEPAD. NEPAD's role in this, Estherine, is absolutely spectacular, and we are very, very honored to be your partner. Is there anybody else that would like to make commitments, that would like to come up? Yes, please. Okay, so that is wonderful. Thanks very much. Dennis Garrity, representing ECRAF. We're very grateful to you and ECRAF. Look, I think you realize this is just beginning, led by these fantastic African leaders. So far, just to let you know, 10 countries have committed 31 million hectares out of the 100 million hectares we're expecting. I think you get the impression that there is something happening here, and what our goal is to turn it into a movement. And most important of all, by the way, I left the most important person of all, Wanjira Maathai, the chair of the Greenbelt Movement, and also the chair of the Global Restoration Council, which seeks to mobilize political support along with financial support for this amazing movement led by African leaders. So thank you all very much indeed. Great. Good. Okay. You want to say? What? Do you want the final word? You just say goodbye. Just say goodbye. Thank you.
Well, just to say thank you all for coming and for this wonderful launch. And we look forward to working with all of you to deliver on the ground. Should we sign now? Should we sign now? Yeah, quickly. Take off.
Where are we going to sign? Yeah. Hi, Sarah. Thank you. Now I have the MOU. Thank you very much.